everybody. Welcome back to Lyle's Friday podcast from here at C4 Corvettes. We've started a new series. I filmed 2 videos last week for the C5 and the C6 about what is the sweet spot, what is the best year to have the fewest problems and the most bang for your buck out of the generation we're talking about. Today we're going to talk about C4 Corvettes, 1984 through 1996 cars. About certain years had certain foibles and problems that others didn't, and once we go through some of those notable points, we're going to come up with an idea of which is probably the best years to shoot for if you want to own a C4. First, I'm going to start by putting out a little disclaimer. If I say that if you have an 86, and I say 86s have a lot of problems, that is not me saying your 86 is a bad car. That's me telling the uninitiated, uninformed, new Corvette buyer that if you want to avoid problems, these cars are probably best to be avoided because of their history. That doesn't mean that your car isn't lovely, beautiful, excellent, and in every way conceivable, awesome. So please don't be upset if I say something about your year Corvette, okay? To get started with, as we said, 1984 through 1996 Corvette, years I would avoid. First one, 1984. Why? First year of the car, suspension was truly rock hard because the car had been developed on the racetrack, not on the street, and it was incredibly potent for its time. The handling was world class, no question, but driving down the bumpy roads of Detroit or Chicago, literally your fillings would pop out of your mouth. I also am not a huge fan of the crossfire injection because basically what they did was they said, let's take the very best parts of fuel injection and the very best parts of carburation, throw all of that away and use what's left. That's how we got crossfire injection, or as we call it, ceasefire injection. That said, certain 84s run like scalded dogs. They've never set a foot wrong. They've been fantastic and way stronger than their horsepower from the factory would indicate from the day they were born. But there's also another half of them that have never been anything but problems. So in that respect, I really would probably, as a first-time buyer, stay away from 84s, particularly because they're enticingly inexpensive. You're going to see cars that look pretty darn nice for $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. My suggestion would be, unless you are a really good mechanic and are used to dealing with the crossfire injection and all of its foibles, probably run. That leads us into the 85 through the 88 cars. Those cars were all very, very similar in that they all had the same body, they all had the same interior, they also all had the same engine, which was the L98 tune port injection or TPI motor. That engine was, on the whole, far less problematic than the L83 Crossfire. It ran stronger, it was better off the line, just an all-around good engine. So the 85 through 88 cars, if I have to tell you what to avoid, here's the big problem with those. Those cars were heavily electronic for their time. And you have to understand, if the car was produced in 85, 6, 7, 8, that means that the electronics were being developed for it back in 81, 2, 3. So we're talking about electronics that are now going on 40 years old that were developed before the Commodore 64. Would you trust the Commodore 64 to do anything important in your life today? Of course you wouldn't, because it's not capable. The electronic systems in these 85 through 88 cars, kind of including the 89, but I'll get to that in a minute, they're so antiquated that there's not a whole lot you can do with them. They don't give you a great deal of diagnostic information. They also ran reference voltage from one system to another system that made no sense. So let's say the plug on your wiper motor on your 85 got some corrosion on it, it got wet and it's kind of crusty and it's not doing a really good job of getting all the electrons in and out. Your AC is probably not going to work. Why? Because they ran voltage through that system to feed the AC system. I don't understand why they did it. They already had a bundle of wires literally that thick behind the dash. Maybe they were just trying to cut down on it, but C4's 85 through 88 really difficult to deal with electronically. The dash clusters almost always need to be rebuilt, anywhere from $300 to $800 to do that, so that you can actually see your speed, tach, and fuel. Just not the best car for reliability. Now, if you want a Sunday driver and you get a great deal and the car's been well maintained and had all its work done, it's not a bad car for 3, 4, 5, 6 grand. But it's not the one I would tell the new Corvette buyer to look for. That gets us on to the 89. 89, still the same foibles as the 85, 6, 7, 8, but 89 had one bright spot. Actually, two bright spots, if you want to call it that. Number one, it was the first year that was available with the ZF 6-speed transmission. Now, while I know that the ZF is clunky, heavy, loud, and very expensive to repair, at the time, it was about the best 6-speed transmission in the world. So it's a pretty fun car to drive. It does have the computer-assisted gear selection called CAGS, which forces you at low RPMs to go from first to fourth, which sucks because it really bogs the engine down and makes the car no fun to drive. Thankfully, there's a $14 part called a CAGS eliminator that you can buy from me or anybody else in the Corvette world. You plug it into the system, makes that problem go away, and you can shift normally. 89 still has all of the foibles of the earlier cars electronically, but at least you can have the bright spot of getting a 6-speed. Also, the first year that the car was offered with a factory convertible hardtop. Down in Florida, we don't have much use for those, but I know up north, A, they look fantastic, and B, if you're going to drive the car in the cooler months, pretty nice to have. And they're getting harder to find in nice condition, so keep that in mind. That moves us on to the 90, which I'm going to talk to 90 all by itself. So 90, the body outside stayed the same, but the interior changed completely. It went from the Buck Rogers Atari 2600 graphic interior to a much more driver-focused, like fighter jet cockpit, where it wraps around the driver and you have your small LCD screen and all the other stuff wrapped around you. I thought that was one of the coolest interiors ever. And to this day, I still think it makes you feel special when you sit in that car. 90 is a good year because you've still got the TPI, you have the better interior. Still have the problem of being the first year of that interior, there's a lot of things that are 90 only. Your digital dash display, your gauge cluster is 90 only. Finding pieces for that when yours starts to go dim or fail is very difficult. The airbag system, 1990, first year for the driver's side airbag. The DERM, or basically the unit that is in charge of firing off that airbag when it receives signals from the impact sensors, 1990 only. Rebuildable, but difficult to find. So again, if the 90's been well maintained, it'll be okay. 91, to me, 91 is one of the sweet spots, and here's why. I've always liked the L98 engine better than the LT1. Now, I know the LT1 had more horsepower, arguably faster, arguably the better motor, but I personally, just me, really love the L98 motor. I thought it was torquey, I thought it was more enjoyable, and I hate the OptiSpark design with a passion. In 91, you get the cool new exterior body panels that they brought over from the ZR1, you get that awesome fighter jet cockpit, and you still have your L98 that I really love. If you can find a nice 91 that's been well maintained, you're going to get a lot of car for the money, and I've always thought that they were probably among the best of the breed from my perspective. Because following in 1992, we start the LT1 engine. Hey, 55 more horses, awesome. Higher top end, also awesome. Smoother torque curve, all those things that the LT1 offered, awesome. Problem is in 92 and 93, the ECMs, or engine management computers, part number ended in 278. They are notoriously problematic as they age. Now, there are a couple of places around the country who can rebuild those if you need to, or reprogram them, but oftentimes the problems they present are difficult to diagnose. It's this intermittent problem of, oh, sometimes it runs great, sometimes it runs like garbage, and I can never tell which, and the computer still doesn't tell you enough about what's going on with the car to give you a technician an idea of where to look. Even as much as we've gone through and done each wire in each of the 4 giant plugs going into that unit to try to locate a problem. And Those pins with age will pull out just a little bit to where you're getting a connection just about like this, and that can be a real problem. It's a nightmare to find. But 92, 93, pretty cool cars as long as you have some knowledge from the buyer or from the seller about the ECM history, about that engine control computer. Moving on, 94, slightly updated interior, different steering wheel, different dash. 94 was the first year that they started implementing the change to the OBD2 computer language. OBD2 tells you a lot more about what a car was doing internally than OBD1 did. It is much more efficient in helping pinpoint where problems might lie, especially when you got that catch-all check engine light, you can go in and find problems. 94, 95, and 96 are construction-wise probably the best of the breed. They had really kind of sorted everything out in the cars by then. They still had the OptiSpark, which again, not a huge fan of the idea of putting something that is destroyed by water under the water pump, but they are the ones that you're most likely going to find in really nice condition, 94, 5, and 6. They all used a different ECM than the 92 and 93, so they don't have the problems that the 92 and 93 did with the 278 unit. 96 specifically was full OBD2. It also went from bank fire to sequential fire in the ignition, which caused it to run smoother and rev better. 94, 95, 96, if you like the LT1, go find yourself a really nice 94, 5, 6. If you're like me and you don't want to deal with the LT1, or you just like the kind of the torquier low-end grunt of the L98 and top speed doesn't matter to you, go find a 91, best of the breed at that point. So you're going to find C4s advertised anywhere from $2,000 up to $20,000 for $1,000 or more for certain Indianapolis pace cars, ZR1s, Grand Sports, all that stuff. If you're a collector, that's one thing. If you just want a Corvette that you can enjoy day in and day out, that's going to be relatively easy to work with and on, my suggestions are find yourself a 91, a 94, 5, 6. Those are my top sweet spot cars, okay? Beyond that, there's nothing wrong with an 89 with a 6-speed. That's a pretty rare car as well. You'd probably be able to get it for a little less money. With all these cars, make sure you get as much history as possible when you go to buy them. Make sure you understand that even on the nicest car, there's probably going to be at least some investment on the front end to get the car back up to where it needs to be for daily driver level of reliability. So, C4 Corvettes, they made a bunch of them. If you've ever wanted a Corvette and you don't have $10 million to spend, they're a great choice. If you have questions about the C4 Corvette, about something on your C4 Corvette, or gosh, if you need parts for your C4, I'm your guy. My name's Lyle. Like and subscribe to me on the bottom. You can get a hold of me at 800-886-5064. I look forward to your questions and comments. Thanks, guys.